Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I'm joined by another parent coach, Lisa Candera is with us today. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I asked you the magic question, which is, what do people most need to know? And you gave me such a great answer. But before we let people know what the answer was, would you introduce yourself a little bit, who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is Lisa Candera, and I am the mother of a now 18-year-old with autism, profound OCD, and anxiety. I am also a practicing attorney and a life coach for autism moms.
I love it. Okay. And when I said to you, what do people most need to know that they don't know? You said,
Regulation starts with you.
oof. So
Yeah.
tell us, first of all, we'll briefly define regulation
Mm.
and then tell us what that means.
Okay, so in the non-scientific version of regulation is not constantly losing your shit, right? Yeah, just feeling a bit more grounded, steady, and capable of responding versus perpetually reacting.
Yeah. So give us an example of what that looks like. I mean, people can for sure understand what it means to constantly lose their shit, but my kid is doing weird, annoying things all day. How can I not lose it when they're behaving this way?
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to back it up a little bit because I know what it's like to hear other people talking about regulation when you're in the middle of that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, like, why don't you come to my house and try that? I get it. I get that resistance. And so I want to preface this with how I came to this work was not because I ever sought out to be a parent coach. I'm a practicing attorney. I had, my gig. What happened was is I found myself in a acute in crisis in a time of sustained acuity with my son, and it happened to also I'm a solo mom, and this also happened to occur during the pandemic shutdown. And so it was the two of us in a, like, I think was a 1,200 square foot apartment at that point. And he was really deteriorating rapidly. His anxiety and OCD skyrocketed once the pandemic hit, and in at home learning was a real big trigger for him. And so I went from a relatively manageable life to a life that involved 911 calls, ER stays, inpatient hospitalizations, and more and more. And so, what I am saying, I am not saying from a place of a person where things have been relatively calm. And I just say that because I get how infuriating it can be because it happened to me. I didn't know where to go for help. And everyone would say to me, you need to talk to a therapist. And therapists are great. But when you're in crisis, and let's just say that particular therapist doesn't know autism and doesn't understand why my 13-year-old is melting down like this, it can feel really invalidating. So like I always like to start when I talk to people from a place of like, I get how hard this is. And the reason I came to this work was to really answer this question for myself. And that was, how do I stay regulated, calm, steady when he's always losing it? And so to that, I say, look, if you can do a little bit better, 3 out of 10 times, because those 3 out of 10 times might be happening within 5 minutes, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
And that's a 300 batting average in baseball,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
Which is a really good batting average, apparently. I don't know anything about baseball, but
I'm
that
gonna
has
take
been
your word for the calculations there because
right.
that's not my area.
And this, but I love this 3 out of 10 thing because I think, you go on social media, you read a book, and the implication, the unstated implication, and that we ourselves make is that we're supposed to be doing this perfectly all of the time.
Yeah.
And no human being, maybe one human being in the history of the world, could do that.
Yeah.
Right.
If they
And
lived
so,
for a day.
exactly. And so, like, this notion of, okay, respond rather than react, maybe we do it slightly better, and can just tell us, like, in your head, what's slightly better? What does that mean, slightly better?
I mean, as simple as it is, well, as simple as it sounds, it's not easy, but really pausing. Because whenever you pause, you are interrupting a pattern. The pattern is to react and to do something and to make this stop and to make it stop now. And it's like pausing is the exact opposite of what you want to do, but it is the thing to do. Um, but I think before you even get into the tactical, because what I wanted, I was like, look, I need to know what to do, what not to do to make tomorrow better and safer for both of us. And what I really needed, and it was all outward focused on my son. Okay. I was, buying him programs, learning all about anxiety, buying him books, teaching him about his thoughts, all this outward focus. And then when it wasn't quote unquote working, I would get really frustrated. And now, and so I am not starting from a steady place whatsoever. And what really became evident was that my reactions really impacted my son. And so before I learned what to do, I needed like that 10,000-foot view because I could not see what was happening in my own house. I was so deep into it. And people like let's say that someone said, "Well, you should do this." And my reaction would be like, well, "You don't even understand. Like how am I supposed to do that because of X, Y, and Z?" Right? What I really had to figure out for me is what was triggering me so much. And my answer to that would have been because he's out of control. And if he wasn't out of control, I would be fine. End of story. Goodbye.
Mhm.
And when I really did start to pause and to dig into it more, and I have a very specific example of my son was having a meltdown over his homework because the OCD and the perfectionism of whether he was doing it exactly right. So he was a kid who would erase and, that kind of thing. And he wanted me to sit right next to him while he did his homework. And meanwhile, I'm like, I don't care if you even do your homework. I would be happy to tell the teacher no more homework and get it written into the IEP. Like, I don't care. Yet, I am getting very angry at him. And so I stepped back, and this is a time when I actually found coaching for myself to start to do that inquiry of like, why is this so upsetting for me? And when I started to do it, it was like, because I feel like I'm failing him. I
Yeah.
feel like I can't help him. I feel like that nothing I do will help. And it was that level of pressure that was really escalating me in those moments and making me feel like I had to control the situation. And so when I started to like peel that back a little bit, I was able to like loosen my grip on trying to make everything the way I thought it should look and thinking that he should be acting in a certain way. And when he wasn't, making that personal, right? About me, about him. And so it really took me being able to understand, like I talk to my clients about the dance. Like we're all in a dance with, the people in our lives in this situation. Like I do one thing, he does another, right? And so he screams at the top of his lungs, I run into the room, what's happening? And then he has that engagement from me. It's like, okay, but what if I didn't view that as an emergency? I was able to pause. What would happen? What would be different? And so that's really like the sort of entree into the work that I do.
And even just picking up that last question, right? Like, what would happen if I didn't view that as an emergency? Well, the first answer is you would have to break through your fear that it is an emergency.
Yeah.
And that's where this coaching work gets really deep very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, now we're asking you to go, one level down and maybe two or three or four levels down before we actually get to the root of, I feel like I'm failing my child. I feel like I'm a terrible parent. Nobody helped me when I was that struggling and I was
Yeah,
that age. Like there are all of these stories running around in our heads where, and this is true, by the way, for parents of neuronormative kids also, just they
for
might be
sure.
a little bit older, a little bit, doing other things that we don't like. But anytime that we're trying to control other people, I know you tell this to your clients all the time, right? If we're trying to control other people, it's because there's something in us that is really unsettled and needs tending.
Yeah, for
And,
sure.
and that's the part I think it's the magical part of the equation. Um, and it's hard and painful and scary and icky.
Yeah, and I think for parents of kids with, let's just say, big emotions, whether they're neurotypical or atypical, whatever they are, is okay. I know that my child maybe is not in danger when they're screaming because they just lost the video game, but their emotions feel like an emergency to me because I am thinking, they're going to start yelling and screaming, and then they're going to start, with their sister, and then I'm never going to be able to get them into bed. Then they won't have a good night's sleep, and then tomorrow morning will be a disaster. I'll be getting calls from work, and this is just like, it is a lot. And so, unfortunately, I think a lot of the work that we have to do as parents when we're in these situations is broaden our capacity for the discomfort. And what helped me a bit was like, okay, this is what it's going to be. Let me figure out how I can make it better for me or not make it worse, so to speak, right? So let's just say, like, I'm holding a boundary with my child, and this was a real one. It sucked. If you hit me or if you lunge at me, I am leaving the home. And no, let me just give you the context. This is COVID times, okay? My apartment, me leaving my apartment and going into my car, like I have vision into the home. Like he's like, and he was 13. He's not unsafe. Let me just, nobody called you. Well, actually, you can call the, it wouldn't matter, right? So, anyhow, but that meant when it was snowing and freezing, I was getting my butt out to my car office, as I was calling it, right? And instead of like viewing that as I shouldn't have to do it, he's out of control, it was, this is just what we're going to do. And just sort of like sinking into that a little bit more, like, this is just a phase in time. This is not forever. And the more I was able to let go of that, the more it, honestly, like, I had snacks in my car. Like, I was good. I was like, okay, well, here we are.
Yeah, it's warm in there. It's cozy in there. There's good
Yeah,
light in there.
it's quiet. It's very quiet.
What you're speaking to here is something that I sometimes call, and you tell me if you call it the same thing, the both and,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because we do have, in your case, a 13-year-old who's having a dangerous meltdown at you in that whatever scenario. And we have a plan that involves you getting safe and using a strategy. And actually, the strategy is working because you're using it.
Well, yeah. And it was like, and I talked to my clients about this. It's like, stop talking because that's just adding more to it. Right. And that was I would lecture. I told you this how many times? And I told you if you did this again, I'd be go. It's like cause effect. You did this. Now I'm gone. And guess what? He stopped because he did not like me leaving. He wanted me present in the home. And so that was a great way to, like, interrupt that and to create more safety and more predictability for both of us. And I will never forget, like, him, doing something like yelling and screaming from like the other room, and I didn't come. And he like crept into my room and he's like, "Did you hear me? Did you hear? Did you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I did." He's like, "Well, like, what's the problem, lady?" And I was like, "Sounds like you're really upset, but it looks like you've calmed yourself down. I'm really proud of you." He's just like, "Oh."
Well, and that's so okay. This is such an interesting example. And actually, the car one is also because you will have, and if you're listening and you're thinking that's such a behaviorist approach, I want to shift this lens a little bit because in some ways it is. In other
Mhm.
words, we have a behavioral chain happening where he does X and you do Y, and that is a dance, again, to your point about the
Yeah.
dance earlier, that gets repeated and reenacted. And when we make a change to the dance, that's when the opportunity arrives to reassess, reconstruct, deconstruct first that pattern. And so the fact that you didn't answer him from the other room, right, was a new dance step. And he was like, are we still doing this dance of, by the way, of connection?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, are we still connected if you're not yelling at me?
Yeah. And, to like, I guess like to drive this point home even more, he had started self-injuring and threatening self-injury and, unaliving and that kind of thing as a teenager. And the first time he said that, I lost my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. I really did freak out and, all of the ways. And then as it continued and he started to do it, and I understood what was happening, and he would say it, and I would just be like, I wouldn't react to it. He'd say, Mom, did you hear what I said? I just said this. And when I said that before, you did X, Y, and Z. And what I love about my son is he'll just like spell that out for me. Like, like here's what I am wanting. Here is what I am seeing, should be happening. But one of the things I would do with my son, it was really necessary because of the OCD and the anxiety, was if I had just taken a behavioral approach, it would have been disaster. What I did with him is I really, like when he was regulated, talk to him like, hey, this is what I'm going to do to support you in those times. So, for instance, I will give you the answer, and the next time you ask me, I'll say, no, I've answered that. And the next time I'll say, let's move on. But I would tell him this because when I did, sometimes just like cut him off, he would be like, you don't even care. You don't even care. It's like, no, that's not what's happening.
It's pause here to state it is very challenging to interface with other people's brains.
Yeah,
It's
it
really
is.
hard.
It is.
And I sometimes think to myself, like, it is a miracle that there are 7 billion of us, like, doddering around on this planet. Like, what are we even doing? Like, this is crazy bananas.
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely felt that at points with my son. Like, oh my goodness, like we were just talking past one another a lot. And and like for like, anybody who's dealing with anxiety and OCD, is that as a parent, I would jump in with the reasoning, but it's not logical. And that is really infuriating. It's like, well, what's the problem? Your clothes are dry. You can feel that they're dry. Like, we're done. Let's go. Let's move on. Right. Or, whatever your kids' fixation or anxiety is about on any given day, it's not going to make sense to you and it's going to be frustrating. And so it's like, I really would try to be like, as much as he's driving me crazy, his brain is doing to that to him nonstop.
Right. And that's where the compassion comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are not giving me a hard time. You are clearly having a hard time. Can you talk a little bit about how you view like scaffolding
Hmm.
versus enabling, particularly in the teenage years? I just did a workshop yesterday actually about kind of neurodivergent teens and kind of this idea of, like, for example, a teen, a 9-year-old on up,
Tween ish. Yeah.
tween, really does need to be able to get themselves out of bed in the morning.
Hmm.
Like, that's a life skill that people should have.
Yeah.
So, and there are some kids who cannot do that right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
And where's that line between like helping and enabling? And I understand that it's very context dependent, but like, I just want, how do you think about
Yeah. I really, I'm in favor of a lot of scaffolding to begin with, right? And I think that we have a lot of internal and external pressure of what things should look like at a certain age. but I don't think a 9-year-old with autism, I know my 9-year-old with autism was not developmentally 9, but not even close, right? And so you got to really pick carefully where you're going to implement these things. And so for me, for instance, if my child has very high anxiety about school, I am going to make getting up the easiest thing for them. I'm not going to add something. Like it's just that is not the hill I need to die on. And in fact, we're not going to school if I leave it up to him. Like it ain't happening. And so I really think it's just so context dependent with your child. But I always think that there are like these like little ways that you can encourage that independence. And I think it is incumbent on us to do stuff that might be counterintuitive to maybe the way you were raised. And so praising a child for doing something you think they should just do anyway, right? Brushing their teeth. I'm really great job today being on time. Great job, getting, from point A to point B. Like really like again, cause and effect, right? Encouraging that skill and like narrating it to them. You're doing a great job. Like and they to help them internalize it because I think that there are so many hits to our concept of self, especially during those teenage years, that as parents, the more we can do to build, because the outside world is there to knock it down, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there is, and I'll use my own teens as an example, like just to your point, thanking them for stuff you think they should be able to do
right.
and noticing it, right? Hey, I noticed you did a really great job cleaning the garage. Thank
Yeah.
you. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and that even if full disclosure, like there was some stains still
Yeah.
from the party and like there was a mop in the sink that I didn't love, right?
You would have done it differently. Yeah. Yeah.
I ran the world.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is very disappointing to me that we don't control other people. Um,
I actually recently did a podcast episode about this, and it was essentially about expectations and saying we are not the baseline for how anybody else in the world should behave.
oh my God. Go listen, everybody who's listening.
And
Go listen to
it
that.
sucks. I'm like, look, I'm not the queen of the world. Damn it. And other people are allowed to have different views and different ways of doing things that aren't mine.
And it's so good too. I mean, we see more of this, right? Mel Robbins is, let them, blah blah blah. Let people do what they want. And somehow, yet, when it comes to neurodivergent children and children in particular, and neurodivergent children in especially, doubly so. Somehow, we're like, no, we have to control, right? Like
Yeah,
people
there's
get
a
to
lot
do.
of that pressure that if we don't, it will never happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incumbent upon us. And so it's a difficult dance, kind of dance. But yeah, because I have clients who have both neurodivergent and neurotypical kids, and I've said like, well, if that was your daughter, what would you have done? She's like, oh, I wouldn't have cared at all. I would have just kept it moving. But because it was her son and he wasn't sharing some new toy with the other kids. And she was like, oh my God, he's not going to have friends. Like she was sort of catastrophizing. I was like, okay, what if that was your daughter and her American Girl doll that she got for her birthday and didn't want any of her friends touching it? She's like, well, that's standard practice here. Like, it's like, yeah. So, I think that's so challenging for special needs parents because we're so gosh, we are just so aware of all these different areas and we're trying to work on so many things at once that it can become very overwhelming. And we lose sight of, oh, right, she's 6 or 10, or
Yeah.
it's after school and she's tired.
Yes. Yes. It's, you fill the bucket with all of the regular kid stuff and then add some, and then add your own vigilance and add the neighbor next door who judges you for, sitting in your car and doing your work.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot of hard brain work, and brains do not particularly like hard work.
Yeah, it's not their thing.
It's not their thing. Lisa, I could sit here and talk to you all day, but
I know.
we're going to pin it here. If people want to learn more about you and your podcast and your work, what do they do?
Yeah. So I am the Autism Mom Coach everywhere. So on Facebook, on Instagram, and I have a podcast, the Autism Mom Coach podcast. And you can join my mailing list. You will get that in your inbox and you will, get my weekly newsletter and everything that I offer. And yeah, if you have any questions, thoughts, send them to me. I'm always open to hearing from new people. My email is lisa at theautismmomcoach.com.
I'd love it. We will link to all of that in the show notes. And uh, Lisa, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.